All right, do you guys want to learn how to turn footage like this into footage like this? And stick around for 10 life-changing ways to level up your cinematic footage. Let's dive in. All right, so it's officially been 38 days since I've been locked in my apartment in Shanghai. And because they won't let me down, I think it's time to go up. All right, so safe to say it's officially overgrown. Not a bad little spot here though. And I think we're gonna try and go up right here. All right, here we are. We made it to the top. There's a couple goodies up here, like some broken locks, and this is what she looks like pretty much. We have the famous Yan'an elevated highway overpass intersection here. All right, so a city of 26 million people. We've been in lockdown for many days now, maybe 25, 26, 27, myself in the 30s. But just look how dead the city center of Shanghai, China is with 26 million people. So you're probably thinking to yourself, Maddie, you made it to a rooftop, but what the heck are we talking about today? So we have 10 things that I'm gonna be like schooling you guys on a little bit for cinematic video that's gonna take your video making skills, your filmmaking skills to the next level. If it's your first time here at the channel, welcome, hello, my name is Maddie, and this is just a home, a community for filmmakers and photographers alike who want to level up their skills. Let's get back into the video. People make the word cinematic difficult and hard to understand, but we're gonna make it super easy today with these 10 tips. These pointers will help you on any camera or phone for that matter, and we're just gonna like break this down super easy. And what I've done is I've put an infographic in the description for you guys to follow along with, and then I've also included the script for this video so you can see all the detailed breakdown of what we're gonna talk today, and I'll just leave that in Google links below. Oh man, all this climbing got me thirsty. I brought everything I need, batteries, SD card, microphone, extenders, all this kind of stuff, but I forgot water in the apartment. Rookie mistake. All right, jumping in with number one, let's talk a little bit about frame rate within your video. So for your footage to look cinematic, a lot of Hollywood films are shot in 24 frames per second. Don't worry if your camera shoots 23.98 frames per second, not a big deal. So frame rate is super important. So can you use slow-mo footage like 30 frames per second, 60 or 120 frames per second? Absolutely, that's totally okay, so long as you're slowing it down in your 24 frames per second timeline. Number two on this list, we gotta talk about the 180-degree shutter rule. It sounds difficult, it's not. So if you're shooting at 24 frames per second, which we wanna be for cinematic settings, you're gonna wanna shoot at ideally a shutter speed of 1/48, but in most cameras cases it's gonna be 1/50. This way we're gonna get natural motion blur. If you do this in front of your eyes and look at how our eye perceives motion, you want that to look very similar on your camera. So shutter speed and this 180-degree shutter rule is super important. Next up is aperture. So creating depth in your image is a cinematic tool that oftentimes people use. I would say don't worry so much about aperture, whatever fits the scene. However, if you're using close-up scenes, it's super nice to have a beautiful bokeh background, a creamy, blurry background. That's super important, and that is cinematic in a way. So I would highly recommend just throwing in some shots with a low aperture like 1.4 or 1.8 if your lens goes that low. Next up, technically speaking, number 4 is the ISO in your camera. A lot of people think that ISO 100, set it there, you're gonna get the sharpest, cleanest, highest quality image. And in some cases that's true, except for we wanna shoot in log. So you need to get familiar with your camera. And for now, I'm shooting on a Sony a7 IV, which has 2
base ISOs, one at 800 and one at 3200 when shooting in S-Log3. So you need to be familiar with this to get the best dynamic range in your image, and obviously that just makes your footage look that much better and cinematic. Ooh, the sun's coming in real strong right now. Okay, next technical spec you need to know is white balance, and a lot of people forget this one. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say here that if your image looks a little off, but all the above settings, the aforementioned settings, are dialed in, you probably got a problem with your white balance. And cameras are getting really good at detecting proper white balance. However, the consistency isn't there. So from shot to shot, your camera is switching the white balance, the Kelvin value. And what you want to do here is make sure from the start of your shoot, you go manual and you figure out in your environment, if it's really easy if it's just in one environment, but for each environment, you need to make sure that you're setting the white balance manually. Otherwise, you're just gonna get some weird, trippy looking results, inconsistency, and it's gonna add a lot of work in your editing process. If you guys are enjoying this video, it goes a really long way if you just leave a like. I appreciate it if there's any value that I'm giving you. If you learned at least one thing new, that would be amazing. And this sun is absolutely blaring in my eyes right now. So yeah, I'm putting in a lot of work here, guys. All I'm asking for is a like. All right, now that you've liked the video, let's jump right back in with number 6. So if your camera doesn't have log, like a log feature to shoot in a flat, unsaturated image to give you the most amount of dynamic range, what you could do then is you could shoot in a neutral profile. So this isn't limited for people with log on their cameras. However, more and more cameras are coming out with it. Canon log, right now I'm using Sony, so I'm shooting an S-Log3, which I'm absolutely loving, and it's actually really easy to grade. So anyways, do this because you'll get the most amount of dynamic range. And if you don't have log footage, no stress, just use a neutral profile. Okay, this next one is super important as well, and a lot of people don't think about it, but it is sharpness. So what you can do is, like for instance, on this camera, there's a ton of sharpness added, and it makes the image look a little bit processed or digital. But in cinematic video, oftentimes you're gonna want just like a softer look to your image. So how you can achieve that is in your camera, you can just dial back all the way to, I think on this camera, like a -7 on the sharpness. You're gonna have a softer image, and by doing that, it will look more cinematic. Another thing that you could do is if you don't want to dial back that softness or be quite as harsh with those dial settings, you could also apply a ProMist filter to the front of your lens, and you can just screw that on. An 1/8 is probably best, but you could go to a 1/4, and that just blooms the image a little bit, and especially light in the image, which makes it super nice. And last thing is that highlights aren't so harsh if you use one of those ProMist filters. So that's really cool too. You get better highlight roll off on skin. So would highly recommend looking into that, and they're not that expensive. All right, so the next little cinematic trick you could do to mimic kind of that anamorphic lens is in post, you can add light flares, kind of like that anamorphic look. So use flashlights or headlamps whenever you can, because it's really easy to flare that in post, and it will sell your cinematic footage. Next up is color grading. You do not have to be a colorist to absolutely nail cinematic look in terms of colors. So there's a lot of programs out there and software that you can download for Final Cut or DaVinci Resolve. For DaVinci, because you can get that free, you can download a trial for Filmbox, and that's been working really good for me. Or you can also get another one, and I'll put the name of it right here, but it's for Final Cut, and it's a whole lot cheaper, and it's very similar to what Filmbox offers, but Filmbox is like $1,000 or something. So try that trial, see if you enjoy it, and then you can make a decision from there. Number 10, and this is a huge one, sound design and music is crazy important in selling your footage as well. So a lot of like ambient tones and music would be super beneficial to add to your footage after you have shot it. And it's really cool to have the idea of the music or tones that you're gonna use in your footage before going out and shooting. All right, so we're almost done here, guys, but I just thought of 2 more things. One being cinematic borders. They're free. I can link you where I got mine for Final Cut Pro with Ryan Nangle if you use that. But it's one of the like best best selling features for cinematic footage because it helps you with that cinematic look and the aspect ratio that is needed to mimic Hollywood movies. So I highly recommend doing that. And last one, if you are a photographer as well, this isn't gonna be amazing because you're not gonna get raw images out of it. But if you're shooting in 4K, 6K, 8K, it's crazy the screen grabs you can do after you've colored it. You can just go through frame by frame, find a super cool cinematic looking frame and save that as a JPEG. And because it's shot in 4, 6, or 8K, it comes out pretty high quality, and hey, it's good enough for social media. So I tried to get to everything that I possibly could, but I'm sure I forgot some things. And if you guys want to just join the community and add something in the comments of what I forgot, or maybe just tell me how this video added value to you, that would go a really long way in helping me produce content. Yeah, I got a lot of cool ideas coming up, and I think we just hit like 620 subscribers. So thank you to all of you guys for that. I appreciate all of you. We'll see you in the next one. Zaijian, Shakwa, see you later.